Sorry, I deleted all the files you told me to delete, by user Oldman712. My job was to design and write software prototypes for individual high-value customers. If they liked it well enough, then a real software engineering team would build the real product. Occasionally, I would run the prototype for a few months while the customer evaluated if they wanted to buy the real project. Now these prototypes are not a lot of code, but they do run with a lot of data. Even compressed, it can be a terabyte or more. Having done this work for years, I've accumulated a small disk farm of past projects, which can be very useful when a customer asks for something just like we did last year, but with a small change or two. The company resisted buying hard drives for this, but it saves me so much time. I ended up buying 1 or 2 a year myself until I accumulated about 10 of them. Figure over $1,000 worth of external drives. Then unexpectedly management changes. New management thinks they can replace old software guy with a cheaper new software grad and I am laid off, with 2 weeks to train my replacement. Yes, it's blatant age discrimination, but impossible to fight, so I just went for a graceful transition to my next job. Except, I have $1,000 of personal disk drives with old customer data on them. Company insists that no ex-employees may take any company data off premises and all files must be deleted. I don't want to just leave the drives at the company, but they insist I must delete all data before taking them home. So I offer. Not good enough. New manager insists I must delete all data and all backups before I remove the drives. Okay. That's what I do. 6 months later, I get a series of desperate phone calls. New software grad has been unable to build any new prototypes. Old customers are calling to get old prototypes updated, and new software grad has no idea how to do that. Executive VP is calling to ask what would it take to bring me back to do my old job. Sorry, I've got a new job now. And even if I didn't, I cannot just modify the old prototype because you insisted I delete all old copies of it. If I did want to modify it, I'd first have to recreate it from scratch. The code still exists in their source control, but the data is the heart of the prototypes. And that old series of 6 months apart data we collected is gone for good, no matter what. Sorry, you screwed yourselves exactly like I told you would happen. Hope whatever you saved by hiring a new grad to replace an actual experienced programmer was worth it. Let me go? Fine. You'll lose millions, by user Pisang Greece. This was around 10 years ago. I've always been very technical minded and was able to read blueprints, construct complex devices, weld, MIG, TIG, stick. Certified in fact among other things. I took a high-paying job with a company that made several things for railroads. The job entailed most of my skills, I mentioned above. It was a very small department, in fact there were only 2 to 3 of us. But we got along great and challenged each other. Which led to higher production. Sadly the one other guy in my department left for a better job which left me by myself. My supervisor was great as well, liked to joke around with me, left me alone to focus on my work and had my back when I needed him. We actually assembled signal enclosures and mast and ladder houses for railroads. Fast forward to 3 years later and the owners buy a much bigger location and move the whole company. As you might expect, several departments get shuffled. Yep, my department gets folded into a completely different department that has no clue what I do. At first, it was fine but it starts to go pear-shaped pretty quickly. My new supervisor seemed good at first. But I quickly realize he's a snake in the grass. For example, I had to help the prototype department assemble a new, lighter type of mast and ladder house. So I'm printing out issues and suggesting fixes, etc. New supervisor is not happy. He keeps coming over huffing, groaning under his breath, standing over my shoulder, etc. He finally interrupts and asks in an angry voice, how much longer will this take? I respond, I have 4 more hours today. And 8 hours every day after that. He looks puzzled. So I explain, this is my department. This is where I work. These are my responsibilities. So if it takes 2 months, that's how long it takes. Almost as if to get the last word in, he says, you work where and when I tell you. And storms off. Next day I'm called into the office and they force me to sign a letter that states, I now work in my new supervisor's department. Fine by me. I watch from a distance in my new department as all the stock, hardware, parts, orders, etc. of my old department begin to rack up. And since I'm the only one that works in that department, or rather, used to work in that department, lol. Nobody is doing a thing about it. After about 2 weeks, my old department is a disaster. With items being thrown wherever it would fit. Orders had begun to miss deadlines and higher UPS wanted answers. Sure enough, I get called into the office where the new supervisor blames me for everything. But wouldn't let me get a word in. Of course, they let me go without any reason or paperwork. The look of relief on my new, ex-supervisor's face when I walk out was priceless. He had no clue what was coming. I leave with a smile plastered to me face. Because I knew something they didn't. I was the only one that knew how to build the mast and ladder structures. I relaxed at home for around 2 weeks because I knew I would be getting a call from them. I ignore the first dozen calls. Then I answer, "Can you come back and build, train new hires, etc. for your department?" "Sure," I say for $20,000. Now that may seem like a lot, but it wasn't. They made millions from these. So there really was only one option: pay me $20,000 or lose millions. Long story short, they went back and forth with me but finally conceded. I received $20,000 for 2 days' work and they were helpless. The cherry on top was my new, ex-supervisor was fired for being a nitwit and costing the company $20,000. Edit. Wow, this popped off. Thanks for all the awards. Didn't expect that. Sorry it was so long. Some further information: I didn't want to work for them again. It potentially would have been a situation they used my knowledge and training of the new staff only to terminate me for some made-up reason. Which I understand, nobody wants a disgruntled employee. Why $20,000? I bounced around on numerous figures, but when it came time to say a number over the phone, $20,000 was the number that came out. No real thought. Could I have gotten more? Yes, I think so. But it paid my bills, spent some little vacation and gave me time to be picky about my next job. Did I get another job? Yes. As to your questions, could I train 2 new workers in 2 days? Yes. Did I do it well? No. The company wanted it as cheap as possible. So they grabbed 2 new guys from a different department with 0 experience. The best I could do was show them the general process given their limited experience and my limited time. As far as getting all the work up to date, in my department the expected prod was 2 per day. My personal record in 1 day was 18 before I stopped. Previous good supervisor told me to stop. What the heck are you going to do after you finish a month's worth of work in a day? You'll be sitting around with nothing to do, or you'll be going home early. The first month I was there I set up a series of jigs that allowed fast, repeatable results. That coupled with years of doing it meant I could build them in my sleep. Tried to be honest with Amazon, but they were having none of it. By user accomplished_week 392. I was telling this story in another forum and thought I'd share here. This was a year or 2 ago when Amazon Fresh were opening up new stores in London. For anyone not familiar with you just walk in, take what you want, then walk out. Your Amazon account gets billed as they use cameras and sensors. So I used the one in White City after it had just opened. I went in just for the novelty factor and got a few things. I found a couple of pricing errors, in my favor, a couple really big pricing errors. I done the decent thing and told Amazon, expecting a thank you, but got a call from an irate call handler insisting I got and was charged the correct amount and I wasn't overcharged and wasn't due anything back. I repeatedly tried in vain to say no, you've undercharged me, but she was having none of it, so I gave up. Naturally, after the call, I changed my tube commute for an 5-minute longer route and I went in each day and bought only those items priced wrong. Suffice to say I have enough toiletries for a few years. Also I am now sickened by a pricey cheesecake brand and have gone off Halo my cheese. TLDR. Got treated like a dick by Amazon customer service on the phone when trying to be honest because undercharged a lot on a few items in their fresh store. So went back each day and only bought they wrongly priced items to the point where I wiped them out daily of those items. Edit. For a bit more clarity on the prices, the cheesecakes and Halo my cheese were pennies in the pound. I paid about 2% of the actual price, so about 8p per 5 pounds fancy small artisan cheesecake, and about 9p for the block of Halo my. The toiletries I paid about 6 or 7% of the actual price, so about 50 to 60p per item instead of 9 pounds to 11 pounds each, plus its toiletries I'd have been buying anyway. Only thing now is I had to get a few big boxes in the garage to store them. Going via this store cost me nothing extra in travel, as in London you get charged a fixed fee for unlimited travel within zones. It only cost me 5 minutes extra commute each day. Don't want to sit inside even though a storm is coming? Okay, by Usariam Yajaism. This happened to me a few years ago and I just remembered it recently. I was working at a restaurant waiting tables in a very affluent area on the Jersey Shore. We had our fair share of entitled people who were under the impression that if you throw enough money around you can do whatever you want and treat people however you want. And when your income depends on their tips, you kind of just have to deal with it. The restaurant had an outdoor dining and bar area that overlooked the ocean with an amazing view. During the summer this was pretty much where everyone wanted to sit rather than our indoor dining area. And for anyone who works someplace with outdoor dining, you know the one monkey wrench that can ruin a very profitable dinner shift, the weather. No matter how accurate the forecast says it's going to be, you can never know for sure. For the most part we never had an issue, because if it started to abruptly rain there would usually be more than enough room inside for all the people who were sitting outside to move it. It's usually a clusterfuck to keep track of which table moved where, but we always handled it without any issue. Until that one day. We had a large party booked one day in our indoor area that took up more than half our tables. A 50th birthday I believe, so our indoor capacity was limited. And even on top of the party, there were customers who were weary about the weather so they decided to sit inside also. And then more and more people started sitting outside. My manager did a quick assessment and realized that if it started raining, we would barely have enough room inside to accommodate everyone who was sitting outside. He told us we had to stop seating our outdoor area and to start recommending to our outdoor tables to move inside because of the impending weather to be on the safe side. Everyone's weather app was saying there was a downpour coming up the coast. Everyone was okay with it, except I had a table of 9 people who seemed fairly middle-aged and very wealthy. Margaritas with top shelf tequila, gaudy-looking jewelry etc. etc. Each end of the table seemed to be in their own conversation not paying attention to the other. Upon hearing about the incoming rain, I go to the woman whom I thought was in charge, she had the fakest tan of them all, and I tell her, let's call her Karen, ma'am I'm really sorry, but because of the weather coming in and our limited seating inside, I'm going to have to move you folks inside so you don't get caught in the rain. This Karen is so entrenched in her conversation she doesn't even register that I, a lowly waiter, was talking to her. So I try again, ma'am I'm sorry for interrupting, but ... She cuts me off exasperated, what? What are you saying? I begin again. Ma'am I'm sorry because of the weather coming in our inside filling up, we need to move you inside. We have a table ready for you, I can move all your drinks and everything for you. She snaps back with the only reason we came here was to sit outside. We'll deal with the weather. I realize she doesn't grasp what I'm saying so I try again. Ma'am just in case that and then she goes from 0 to 100 and yells we'll fucking deal with it. She yelled so loudly that the people on the other half of her table heard. They didn't hear our prior exchange but only heard her outburst and went back to their conversation, assuming this must be normal behavior for her. She wants to deal with it on her own? You got it. So I began to take their order. Filet mignons. A few lobster tails. Expensive shit. I put the order in and I look back and all the other tables had moved inside, because they all were rational human beings, and my table of 9 entitled jerks were the only ones out there. I heard the leathery-looking Karen say to the rest of the table, wow, we have the entire patio to ourselves, what luxury. After a while I looked inside and saw that the table I had held for them was taken by another party that had just walked in, the last available table. And just as the last butt hit the seat, I felt the best feeling I possibly could have felt at that moment. A glorious raindrop tapped on the top of my head. Oh sweet glory! Within seconds it went from beautiful blue skies to torrential downpour. Everyone at the table grabbed their drinks, a little watered down at this point, and ran inside. After they shook themselves dry, they looked around and realized there was nowhere for them to sit. Most of them looked dumbfounded, like a lost child in a supermarket. Karen makes a beeline to me and screams, we need a table. I reply, I'm sorry ma'am, we're fully seated and on a wait for our indoor seating. Maybe one table on the waiting list, but a list is a list, well what are we supposed to do now? She hawked back at me which led to me so eloquently saying ma'am as you said you would, you fucking deal with it. I air quoted the fucking dealing it to really emphasize that that was her response and as I said that everyone else at the table realized that was our interaction earlier and Karen had dug their graves. I felt bad for most of them because if they had all known the circumstances they probably would have convinced Karen to move in. But after she raised her voice and cursed at me, all bets were off. And as serendipity would have it, at that moment their food came out and we handed it to them. There they were. 9 people in damp clothes holding a Cosmo in one hand and filet mignon in another with nowhere to sit to eat. The rest of her party convinced her just to get some boxes for their food and pay their check and leave. As I hand Karen the check, she smugly says, "Well, this will be reflected in your tip," to which I replied, "Ma'am, we implement a 20% tip on parties of 8 or more. It's our policy, and it's clearly stated in our menu." She paid and then they left with their boxed up food, leaving behind their half-full drinks. Best $60 I ever made. Edit, I definitely got the numbers wrong with how much they tipped and whatnot. It was a while ago. All I remember was the satisfaction. 1 per person, per visit, by usertater229. My dad is a patient guy. And lives to keep my mom happy. The OL happy wife, happy life. My entire family goes crazy at Christmas. We decorate everything. Stand still too long and you'll have tinsel and lights on you. Mom was getting out her Christmas table setting and commented that she didn't have fancy Christmas glasses to match the dishes. Cue Dad. Dad usually has TV on while is doing other stuff. Writing, reading, just basically background noise. He was retired and disabled from army, so he had time and used drive-through because he walks unsteady. Well, a familiar fast food chain was offering a 99-cent Christmas goblet. It had holly and stuff and a goldish rim, with menu item purchase, 1 per visit. So Dad, to keep Mom happy, drove to the restaurant and ordered a small soda and a goblet. It was about $2. This was a few years back. He asked if he could buy more because wife wanted a set. Nope. 1 per purchase per visit. So Dad flowed their orders. P. Order drink, buy a glass. Back in line at drive-through. He did this 5 times in the drive-through. Order drink, buy a glass. Order drink, buy a glass. Order drink, buy a glass. Repeat, repeat. Now Dad has 5 drinks, that he was going to just take home. And had run out of room in the car. Finally, someone seeing that this guy is gonna keep driving through and clogging up the system in the drive caught on. Next time he gets to the order spot, they ask him, "How many goblets do you need?" Dad said, 12. So they allowed him to purchase the remaining 7 for $7 and he didn't have to keep clogging up the drive-through for a soda order. He said, "I tried to do that the first time. We've still got that fine set of fast food goblets that are an official family heirloom now."